Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Secretary Quinn, for being here. Every time I visit our New Hampshire State Veterans Cemetery in Boscawen, I'm obviously reminded of the incredible sacrifices that our service members and their families make. I'm also reminded of how important the cemetery is to our state, our communities, whether it's people gathering to place flags on graves Memorial Day, whether it's holiday time and a wreath goes on every grave. People come and it's like they're remembering what's important again, freedom and family and home, right? So I am very grateful to all of you. I'm grateful to the state cemetery staff who do a wonderful job keeping our beautiful cemetery beautiful and meaningful. But today I also want to talk about Sergeant David LeBlanc and his wife Cheryl of Nottingham, New Hampshire. Cheryl never stopped believing that maybe one day her husband would be able to be interned in Boscawen. David and Cheryl were high school sweethearts at Manchester High School West. Cheryl remembers David's National Guard service in the 1970s and his deep commitment to serving our country. Sergeant David LeBlanc died on June 8, 2016, and for 6 years, Cheryl kept his urn at home because she hoped that someday he could be buried among his peers in the State Veterans Cemetery. David initially wasn't eligible for burial at Boscawen because despite his 6 years of service to our country, he was part of the National Guard. So until recently, he wasn't eligible. But I was so pleased and honored to be able to work with Senator Kramer and others to pass the Burial Equity for Guard and Reserve Act into law in 2022, which enabled states to expand burial eligibility to members of the National Guard and Reserve without losing the cemetery's VA funding. David was the first Granite Stater to benefit from this change of law, and he was laid to rest in Boscawen on the 6th anniversary of his death. David's years in the National Guard showed his commitment to our nation, and as Cheryl put it, this expanded eligibility helps to show that these service members are never forgotten. So the Burial Equity Act has helped additional veterans like David LeBlanc be laid to rest in state veteran cemeteries. As you mentioned in your testimony, the Veteran Cemetery Grants Program helps state veteran cemeteries improve and expand. Can you please discuss the importance of the Veteran Cemetery Grants Program and its support to state veteran cemeteries, especially as these cemeteries allow more families to bury their loved ones who served in the National Guard and Reserve?
Senator, a great question. And I will tell you, and I tell every state that I visit to, the partnership between the federal government and the state, tribal, and territorial governments through the Veteran Cemetery Grant Program, I think is one of the best relationships that's out there. We would only, I mentioned 94% of veterans have a cemetery within 75 miles of where they live. Through the NCA, we would only be at about 77%. So the states have augmented that, and we see states continuing to want to build those cemeteries. And then augment that with, I served in the National Guard 28 years, so augment that support that they provide to all veterans with the ability of Guard reservists to be interred within that cemetery with those that they have served with.
Right.
I've seen Guard members do a lot of things that they just didn't meet the active duty time. So I greatly appreciated the Guard Reserve Burial Equity Bill. But that partnership, I think, is the best between the federal government and the state, tribal, territorial governments.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on that. I wanted to turn to kind of the more general issue of supporting families. Most, if not all, veterans will tell you that their service required sacrifices of their families, something we all try to recognize as much as we can. In your testimony, you touched upon how the VA supports veterans' families, including through the availability of burial to spouses and certain family members. You also mentioned how comforting it can be to families when they learn of these benefits. How can the VA better communicate to veterans and their families that they may be eligible for these benefits? Because I think some families really don't know.
Yes, Senator. So only 22% of veterans take advantage of interment within a national or grant-funded cemetery.
Okay.
16% in a national cemetery, about 6% in grant-funded cemeteries. So that's why we're doing this end-of-life planning, talking to veterans, talking through VSOs. VHA is on board, VBA is on board, but we need to get the word out that this is this is the final benefit that the nation will be able to provide to you for your service. And so we've got to get the word out. We'll continue to beat that drum, but we need to increase that knowledge of the benefit that's out there.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Secretary Quinn, thank you for your service as well.